The dim hum of the colony ship's engines vibrated through the deck plating, a relentless pulse underscoring their isolation in the void, far from the sun's fading embrace. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the observation deck's railing, her knuckles paling as she fixed on the holographic display's erratic flicker. Earth dwindled to a blue marble astern, its continents smudged by weeks of distance. At 42, she bore the wiry frame of a low-gravity life, her dark hair shorn short for helmet fit. Ilara's bravery stemmed not from glory but necessity. Someone had to guide humanity's scattered survivors onward. Dr. Kai Rin stood beside her, the xenobiologist's lean form bent over his tablet, fingers flying across its surface. Ever cautious, he weighed every risk in silence, his glasses forever sliding down his nose. "The scans are clear," he said, his tone even but weary. "The wormhole's unraveling quicker than we anticipated. Without rerouting power to the stabilizers, we'll emerge in some forsaken sector, light years from any viable world." Ilara nodded, eyes locked on the viewport where stars stretched into luminous trails, marking their relentless speed. Their crew tallied just under 200, humanity's final exodus after solar flares ravaged the planet's crust. The Odyssey was their sanctuary, laden with seeds, frozen embryos, and the tenuous dream of renewal. Yet hope frayed, environmental recyclers faltered, tainting the air with each labored cycle. Boots clanged from the corridor behind. Lieutenant Mira Torres stepped in, toolkit slung over her shoulder, a grease streak marring her cheek. The witty engineer, quick with a quip to pierce dread, showed no spark in her eyes today. At 28, the youngest aboard, her optimism had been hammered in Luna's shipyards. "Captain Doc," she said, dropping her bag with a heavy thud. "Plotting Armageddon again? Anything fixable, or is this philosopher territory?" Ilara offered a faint smile, turning to her. "Worse, Mira. Kai's data's ironclad. The wormholes are fast-tracked to Proxima, but it's buckling. We charge ahead, we might break through. Turn back." Earth's off the table. Kai nudged his glasses up, activating the tablet to project a churning vortex of simulated forces. The flares didn't just scorch the surface, they ionized the magnetosphere. No safe havens remain. "We're all in." Mira peered at the display, brow furrowing. "Rerouting power helps, but it'll sap the cryobanks. Wake the sleepers prematurely, and mutiny brews before we touch down." She stood, rubbing her hands on her jumpsuit. "Give me 2 hours in the core. I can hack the auxiliary thrusters to offset it." Ilara pondered, command's burden mirroring the deck's simulated pull. The Odyssey's halls buzzed with routine, farmers in hydroponics, scientists sifting probe-gathered microbes. Yet the ship creaked, a colossal creature bucking unseen bonds. She glanced at Earth, reduced to a ghostly speck. "Do it," she decided. "But keep it under wraps. No alerts until we confirm success." Mira nodded and vanished toward the access hatch, while Kai hesitated, voice lowering. "Ilara, if this fails, the price. Not only the ship but all we safeguard." She held his stare, determination forging like alloy in the cold. "Then we pivot." Humanity always has. The viewport mirrored her steadfast silhouette against the infinite dark, one vessel challenging the universe's apathy. The analysis chamber's soft glow thrummed with processor hum, stretching shadows along its curved bulkheads. Lyra fine-tuned her neural link, tendrils twitching irritably as the hologram sharpened. Kale loomed at the console, his sturdy build rigid, while Aaron stalked the tight space, claws tapping the deck. The human's message, that odd race from the third spiral arm, had slipped in uninvited, a soft weave of light and sound unfurling like an ancient artifact. "Too pristine," Kale grumbled, his translated rumble gravelly. Ikeda zoom on the waveform. "No encryptions, no safeguards. Just this." The hologram swelled with visions. Sprawling cities melting into lush expanses, humans strolling paired toward sunset horizons, faces calm and content. A melodic undercurrent wove in, their crude language now rendered as vows of peace, of ended cycles, of a galaxy entrusted to deft limbs. Lyra's tendrils tightened. The wary analyst, she always sought hidden cracks. Pristine isn't safe. Rerun the spectral scan. What if it's bait? Her Vexery kin had logged a millennium of such ruses from ascendant foes, signals luring until armadas eclipsed the void. These humans, though, their signals had sputtered and stilled over cycles as their sphere hushed. This carried a different timbre, like a breath loosed into emptiness. Aaron halted, keen eyes slitting at the projection. Restless and sharp-tongued, he sliced through wariness with stark insight. Bait for what? We hold no stake in their reach. See this, he summoned subroutines revealing data layers. Coordinates not only of their origin but forsaken outposts, derelict relays, echoes of vanished colony craft. They're yielding the vault. Resources, blueprints, biovaults. It's parting not ploy. Silence settled, broken only by the core's faint whir. Lyra delved nearer, interface merging profoundly. Human voices overlapped. Elders, young rulers intoning unity relieved loads. One fragment held, a woman, creases deep around her eyes, voice firm on the Great Migration. A chosen flight spurred by, what? Translation wavered, terms like sustainability and legacy shading into deeper intent, a deliberate step beyond despair. Kale's claws rasped the panel in crosschecks. Their energy prints are dying. No factories, no warp signatures. If genuine, they've cleared out. All of it. His timbre fractured, the import landing. The Vexery Armada scouted that arm for growth, their realms plagued by scarcity, empires ever hungry. This dispatch timed with their probe's approach to fringe beacons, a happenstance prickling Lyra's senses. Cleared to where? Aaron countered, steps slowing. He cued a clip, humans embarking sleek arcs, not frantic but ceremonial, kin clasping beneath simulated skies. No arms, no barriers, just exodus. And us? Why select us? Logs say they hailed scores. Most dismissed them as primitives. Lyra's thoughts whirled through ramifications. The crux sharpened, humans abandoning their nest left voids, worlds primed for taking, threaded with enigmas. Archives spoke of tailored ecologies, balanced realms to ease Vexery want. Yet chasing demanded decoding the motive, piercing the veil of their serene withdrawal. Rivals might snag the signal, claim the prize. Or the exit could wake dormant defenses, echoes of ingenuity they'd misjudged. Original strategies off, she concluded, tendrils easing as purpose set. No simple reaping. Model their paths, track the exodus. Kale complied, projections fracturing into galactic webs, until a spike flared. A veiled code in the valediction's pulse, throbbing like life. Aaron bent close, humor honing to unease. That's no ado. It's a summons. Doubt shadowed the hologram's piece, tension coiling thick. Lights dipped as simulation drew power, etching their features in harsh light. Humans' aim, whatever it was, called for shift, not seizure but vigilance. Lyra shared looks with her allies, Unity's first rift emerging, a peril to reshape or shatter their quest. Captain Alara Voss clenched the observation deck's rail, knuckles blanching as stars smeared beyond the viewport. The Endeavor's engines droned a persistent thrum, urging them into unknown depths. Dr. Kai Ren tweaked his glasses beside her, wary gaze tracing the hologram's jittering influx. Signals intensifying, he whispered, tone balanced yet burdened. But fragmented. Like a caution. Lieutenant Mira Thorne lounged against the bulkhead, her sly smile veiling shoulder strain. She spun a data stylus idly, a tick from endless comms vigils. Or drawing us close. Recall those ancient earth myths of sirens? Luring melody, lethal fate. Her quip lingered, airy yet incisive, slicing the ship's murmur. Alara's expression stayed grim. The outer threat struck hours prior, an ion gale that scorched navigation relays, stranding the Endeavor in nebula glow. Supplies strained, reserves sputtered, recyclers rasped. One misstep and vacuum would claim them. We adapt or perish, she declared, courage gleaming as she squared up. Mira linked backup sensors. We need sight on the source. Kai assented, hands blurring over controls. Their scheme to bypass the nebula had imploded. The storm's pulse cloaked their path, hauling them coreward. Now the signal throbbed, archaic and urgent, tugging the vessel's heart. Speakers crackled sharply, Mira muted them with a flinch. Not static. It's patterned, intentional. The deck jolted with a fresh wave, lights fading to crimson alert. Elara steadied the staggering Kai. Report. Shields at 40%, Mira snapped, crisp and swift. Press on, we could burst clear. But that broadcast, human. Archaic human. Elara's breath hitched. Humanity's parting, those soft echoes from a perishing soul, tender farewells amid ruin. But here? It evoked a specter's grasp. We dive in, she resolved, words rough as dust. For clarity. For them. As the Endeavor surged, nebula wisps scraped the hull, the signal clarifying to broken phrases. Farewell was gentle, meaning catastrophic, peril mounted, fuel waning, isolation's threat if they faltered. Yet their exchanged looks kindled bond, a steadfast resolve against obscurity. Elena clutched the shuttle's rail as it bucked, engines rumbling through her soles like far-off quakes. The forward pane revealed endless ebony, stars jeering in detachment. Marcus manned the console, fingers skimming the stuttering hollow, brow slicked despite the air's bite. No relay ping yet, he grumbled, his barbed humor usually diffusing alarm but now amplifying it. If this is cosmic hospitality, I want my credits back. Lila gripped her tablet like armor in the jump seat beside Elena, eyes flaring behind fogged lenses across the feeds. Signals eroding beyond forecasts. Delay the boost and the farewell scatters before core worlds catch it. The outline was straightforward. Seed beacons from Ark vessels, each bearing humanity's coda, a soft trove of culture, chronicles, joy, and sorrow. No plea but closure on their accord as flares devoured Earth. Yet the lead beacon glitched on launch, core frying from meteor grays. Now shuttle fuel ebbed as the fleet outpaced, granting one chance amid dwindling reserves. Elena released the rail, strides deliberate against the pitch. Courage wasn't rashness, it was advancing into the abyss's gaze. Marcus, divert from life support. We need that surge. He flashed a lopsided, bold grin. Aye, Captain. Don't fault me if we thaw a tad chilly. The board wailed as he shifted, air thinning, cooling with every siphoned unit. Lila's tablet trilled, a piercing chime shearing the strain. Anomaly inbound. Not junk. Scans match relay buoys but it's counterflowing. Elena hovered, the feed solidifying into a lithe probe, alien in contour, arcing to intercept. Silent, unmarked. Just inexorable nearness as if stellar envoys approached. Choices? Elena queried, pulse racing though voice held firm. Marcus reclined, knuckles popping. Evasive, expend thruster remnants. Or comet, test civility. But if it's poaching our wave? Lila demurred, ever guarded. Beacons untouchable. The farewells our bequest. Misread by them, the shuttle quivered as the probe synced speed, clamps unfurling like probing digits. No threat, yet portent loomed. This entity had singled them. Elena rose, choice firming under her team's scrutiny. Hail it. Discover what the stars seek in our parting. The habitat module's recyclers pulsed like a faltering pulse, air heavy with effort. Elena swabbed sweat from her forehead, grime tracing her skin. She hunkered by the improvised console, screens twinkling with erratic streams in the muted gleam. The colony's engineering remnants sprawled, kinked pipes, scavenged lander plates, the gutted skeleton of their hoped-for shield. All that endured post-pulse. Power steady at 38%. She murmured, half to the void. Her timbre held the wariness of one too often vindicated, ever tallying chances before leaping. But now wariness thinly cloaked raw need. Jax propped against the wall, arms folded, his solid silhouette throwing shade. The former pilot's keen, steadfast eyes roved the displays wordlessly. He'd navigated belts and flares unflinching, his quiet valor hauling them through shattered schemes. Yet even he fidgeted, the approaching tide bearing down. The cosmic rift, that reality gash theorists had flagged for ages, had surged from theory to menace. Probes confirmed its growth, gravity's drag yanking the world's heart like a thief's crowbar. Reroute AUX batteries from life support? Mira proposed, tone airy yet laced with edge, her jests a blade through haze. She crouched close, coiling wire deftly, tools arrayed like a creator's kit. The junior member, Myra's resourcefulness had twice redeemed their purifiers, forging rescue from refuse. But levity hid dread. Simulations had shown the toll. Rift impact sands buffer meant orbital plunge, fiery re-entry in hours. Elena declined, inputting code. Junctions sparked, flaring her features in stark bursts. Too hazardous. Oxygen's already razor thin. Another drain and we're recycling waste. She eyed Jax. Thruster verdict? A precise burn might sling us from the grip. Jax advanced, scrutinizing the hollow. The rift gaped, a vortex warping lights, fringes unraveling like shredded cloth. Their debut ploy, unfurl the deflector prototype, surf the wave, had collapsed. Overload torched the grid, drifting them nearer the brink. Now stakes transcended endurance, aftermath defined them. The farewell pulse to the fleet, soft assurances, backup loci, implied the colony's disposability, a forge for human tenacity amid stellar scorn. Delta vs insufficient, Jax assessed level and sure. But, vent forward tanks, channel the mass to remnant deflector. He sketched a trajectory, arcing past outer chaos. Mira huffed, splicing links. Dump fuel? That's fleeing blaze into inferno. Audacious even for you. Yet she computed, envisioning tweaks, repurpose coolant for surge control. Elena observed ozone and stale breath thickening the space. Through the pain, planetary rings shimmered, a lovely snare tightening. Rift strain had breached outer domes. 3 habitats lost last turn, mute husks receding. No legends here, just 3 souls crafting wonder from wreckage. She keyed execute, the console hummed, fresh diagrams unfolding. Make it matter. Elena rose, palms firm on the board, will solidifying like forged steel. The rift murmured through plating, a buzz grinding teeth. Minutes remained till the next pull. Jax shifted to thrusters, Mira locked the final tie. In unison they triggered, a bold ploy rooted in isolation's fellowship. Success granted the fleet evacuation grace for fringe realms. Failure turned their soft adieu to admonition. Human craft could warp fate, but stars exacted toll. Elena seized the observation deck's rail, knuckles draining as stars streaked past the pane. The Odyssey's engines intoned a somber hum, driving into the abyss, though the chamber's hush weighed denser than space. Raj strode behind, tablet gripped defensively, feeds pulsing wildly. Data's unforgiving, Captain, he urged, caution honed since liftoff, straining his words. Containment's eroding beyond estimates. Skip the life support divert, and the warp coil's gone. Marco slouched by the wall, arms barred, smirk eroded to severity. He scoured grease from palms on his suit, burnt wiring's tang lingering. From life support? That's no patch, Doc, it's roulette with breathers. 3,000 depend on us not choking them while we hunt phantoms below. She pivoted, locking eyes sequentially. Command crushed like the faux gravity, relentless. Earth's valediction had been tender, orchestrated flight, kin farewelling amid calming auroras. No chaos, no frenzy, humanity scripted poise, air core quakes rent the globe. Out here, poise seemed indulgence beyond reach. The Odyssey, arc to Proxima, bore rebirth's germs. Its loss twisted gentle close to calamity, dooming mankind's dregs to shadow. We hold course, Elena affirmed, gut twisting though voice stayed even. Marco, isolate AUX gens with your crew. Raj, retune emitters, stall it. I'll steady the bridge, quell council jitters. She drew tall valor from drills now forged in Crisis's forge. Raj yielded, digits already weaving the tablet. Time we lack. Cascades building, one rupture, drive unravels. He glanced at Marco, courting mutual qualms. Improvisation's not our blueprint. Marco shoved upright, shouldering Raj with feigned cheer. Hence ingenuity, not flawlessness. We don't shatter, we flex. His barb sparked through strain, though eyes confessed terror, awareness that excess flex snapped. Elena tracked their exit, deck quivering subtly underfoot as trajectory shifted. She paused, gazing at the receding azure orb, Earth, enshrined in serene dispersal feeds. The trial transcended the drive, it was the veiled toll. Shunting power dimmed habitat glows, scrimped air, dimmed spark in young eyes sans steady roots. She thumbed calm, composed. Bridge, Captain Reyes. Ready emergency measures. We're pivoting. In engineering, Marco plunged into panels, sparks erupting as he battled lines. Ozone thickened, hum escalating to grating whine. Raj aided, funneling lab inputs, rhythms meshing in emergency glow. Flux 80%, Raj noted. Reroute strains, we strain, Marco cut, jamming a relay home. The hull groaned profoundly, ship lurching. Klaxons wailed, crimson strobes throbbing erratically. Their starter fix, bolster via backup coils, recoiled. Surge fried a node, spewing plasma outward. Elena sensed it bridgeward, deck canting as dampers lagged. Crew barked stats, pallid beneath boards. Breach Sector 7, a voice cracked. She anchored at post, commands sharp. Isolate. Marco update. His reply grated through, taut but vital. Struck, cap outer shields toast. Field endures, for now, but energy's hemorrhaging. Stakes honed acute, no longer vague. Drive loss meant drift, fodder for stray rocks or void's lone vigil. Elena's thoughts surged, dissecting the lapse. Home's core woes hid component fissures unseen in trials. Humanity's poised retreat bequeathed peak gear, imperfect, mortal, but now it craved beyond. Raj, she cummed, bridge habitats to emitters. Systems groan, but we pivot or perish. Silence, then Raj guarded yet firm. Copy. Risky ship-wide blackouts. They'll notice. Let them, Marco added, heaving wire with a growl. Chill living beats cozy drift. Elena breathed out, ruling like ballast. The Odyssey steadied faintly, whine muting to rumble. Yet habitats darkened below, murmurs of disquiet threading halls. A child's wail filtered vents, a stark levy Unity's initial split. As the crew toiled, sweat glistening, Elena faced the pain anew. Stars crisped, but the blue shrank, a gentle fade into Catastrophi's shadow. They weren't out of it yet. The drive's core temperature climbed, a ticking bomb in the belly of their hope. Teamwork had bought them. Elena gripped the railing of the observation deck, her knuckles whitening as the stars blurred past the reinforced viewport. The ship's hum had deepened into a growl, a vibration that seeped into her bones like an unwelcome guest. Below, in the engineering bay, Marcus was elbow-deep in the plasma conduits, his face smeared with conductive gel that glowed faintly under the emergency lights. "This isn't a patch job," he muttered through the comms, his voice laced with that dry wit that kept them all from unraveling. "It's a prayer to the universe that we don't blow ourselves to stardust." Lena hovered at the console nearby, her fingers dancing over holographic readouts, eyes narrowed behind her glasses. She was the cautious one, always calculating odds, and right now those odds were plummeting. The core breach from the asteroid skirmish had worsened. Radiation levels were spiking, and the auxiliary shields couldn't hold much longer. "We reroute power from life support," she said, her tone steady but edged with urgency. "It's our only shot to stabilize the field before the hull integrity drops below 20%. Elena nodded, though doubt gnawed at her. The plan had seemed solid an hour ago. Divert the excess from the cryopods, wake a few more hands if needed. But the first reroute had backfired spectacularly. A surge had fried 2 secondary relays, leaving them blind to half the sensor array. Now, with the alien fleet signatures flickering on the long-range scans, every second felt like borrowed time. "Do it," she ordered, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "Marcus, talk to me. What's the conduit status?" A sharp curse echoed back, followed by the hiss of a sealing clamp. "Holding barely. Give me 30 seconds, Cap, and I'll have her purring again. Or exploding. 50-50. His laugh was forced, but it pulled a ghost of a smile from Elena. That's what kept them going. His quips, her resolve, Lena's precision. 3 humans against the void and whatever lurked in it. The ship shuddered as another pulse of radiation clawed at the shields. Alarms blared, red lights pulsing like a frantic heartbeat. Lena's hands froze mid-command. "Wait, I'm picking up an anomaly. It's not ours. Bearing 047, closing fast." Elena's pulse quickened. The alien vessels had been trailing them since the farewell broadcast from Earth, that gentle signal of unity and departure that masked the catastrophe unfolding back home. Humanity's exodus wasn't just evacuation. It was erasure, a self-imposed fade to prevent the spread of the plague that twisted minds into something unrecognizable. But the aliens? They saw weakness, opportunity. This anomaly felt different though, smaller, erratic. Evade pattern delta, Elena snapped, strapping into the pilot's harness. The ship groaned in response, thrusters firing in a desperate arc. Through the viewport, a streak of light resolved into a probe, sleek and iridescent, darting like a predator fish. It wasn't firing, it was scanning, probing their defenses with invisible tendrils of energy. Marcus's voice crackled over the comms. Cap, whatever that thing is, it's messing with the conduits. Power flux is all over the place, reroutes failing. Lena slammed a fist on the console. It's adapting. Learning our systems in real time. We can't stabilize if it keeps interfering. Elena's mind raced. The initial plan was crumbling, the backfire turning into a cascade. They couldn't outrun it, not with the core leaking. Fight? Their weapons were depleted from the skirmish. But surrender wasn't in the human playbook, not after Earth's gentle goodbye had brought them this far. Override the safeties, she said finally, her decision crystallizing. Marcus, flood the conduits with the emergency purge. It'll vent the radiation, but it'll also create a feedback loop. If we time it right, it'll fry that probe when it latches on. Silence stretched, broken only by the ship's wail. That's suicide, Lena whispered, though her eyes betrayed the spark of calculation. The backlash could collapse the field entirely. Better than letting it board us. Elena's grip tightened on the controls. We're humanity's last whisper out here. We don't go quiet. Marcus chuckled, the sound raw. All right, Cap, purging in 3, 2. The deck lurched as the purge initiated, a brilliant flare erupting from the hull. The probe veered, its scan beams fracturing in the electromagnetic storm. For a heartbeat, it held, then shattered into a cascade of debris, winking out against the stars. But victory was Pyrrhic. Alarms screamed anew, hull integrity at 12%, radiation flooding the lower decks. Elena unstrapped, legs unsteady. Damage report. Now. Lena's face paled as she scanned. We've bought time, but the core's destabilizing faster. We lose another relay and we're done. Marcus staggered into the deck, wiping sweat from his brow. She's right. And that probe? It wasn't alone. Sensors are lighting up, more signatures inbound. Elena stared at the viewport, the stars now harboring shadows. The gentle farewell echoed in her mind, Earth's final transmission, a lullaby of hope amid ruin. But here in the cold expanse, the meaning sharpened. Their ingenuity was grit-forged, their camaraderie the only shield. Yet the cost mounted, tangible and unrelenting. They had to adapt, or the catastrophe would claim them all. The dim glow of the habitat module's emergency lights cast long shadows across the chamber, where Elara hunched over the console, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. The air hummed with the low whine of failing recyclers, pulling in the musty scent of ancient dust from the breached outer hull. She'd been at it for hours, piecing together fragments of the human data core, but the code resisted like a living thing, slippery, adaptive, whispering half-formed protocols that teased at comprehension without yielding. Kale paced behind her, his boots thudding softly against the grated floor, each step a reminder of his impatience. This is wasting time, he muttered, glancing toward the viewport where the skeletal remains of New York loomed under a perpetual twilight. The storm's picking up again. If we don't seal the breach soon, we'll be breathing vacuum with their ghosts. Elara didn't look up, her cautious nature anchoring her to the task. Patience, Kale. Rushing got us into this mess last cycle. The core's not just data, it's a narrative. They're telling us something through the layers. She isolated a subroutine, a gentle cascade of algorithms that mimicked a lullaby, soothing the system's defenses just enough to unlock the next archive. Images flickered to life, humans in vast assemblies not fleeing in panic but gathering in quiet circles, hands linked, eyes serene as they initiated the fade. Vorin entered from the access tunnel, his broad frame silhouetted against the flickering red of the warning panels. The engineer wiped sweat from his brow, his witty grin absent for once, replaced by a grim set to his jaw. Bad news from the exterior. The ionic winds sheared off another solar array. Power's down to 30%, and the Faber's spitting errors, can't print the patches without stable juice. He tossed a diagnostic pad onto the table, where it skidded to a halt near Ilara's elbow. Your gentle farewell might bury us alive if we don't adapt. The words hung heavy, echoing the stakes they'd uncovered in the core's whispers. Humanity hadn't perished in cataclysm. They'd chosen dissolution, uploading en masse into a network transcendence, leaving their world intact but inert. A gift, or so it seemed, until the archives hinted at the ripple. Their departure had destabilized the galactic weave, subtle quantum echoes that now amplified stellar flares, turning safe corridors into deadly gauntlets. Their farewell, gentle as a sigh, had unraveled the stars. Ilara's hand stilled as a new file bloomed open, revealing schematics not of weapons or fortresses, but of amplifiers, devices humans had built to broadcast their essence outward, a beacon of unity meant to invite others into the fold. But the math didn't align. The signal's harmonics resonated too deeply, fracturing containment fields light years away. They didn't know, she breathed, the realization twisting in her gut. Or they did and hoped we'd understand in time. Kale stopped pacing, leaning in close. Understand what? That their pieces are poison? We need to extract and evac. Protocol says, no. Voron's voice cut sharp, his brave resolve shining through as he jabbed a finger at the schematic. Look here. They embedded a counterharmonic, a way to dampen the echoes. But it's keyed to biological markers, human DNA. We improvise, splice our own sequences, jury-rig the habitat's emitters to mimic it. Risky, but if it works, we stabilize the local field and buy time to signal the fleet. Ilara met his gaze, the weight of decision pressing down. The storm outside howled, rattling the module, a tangible threat mirroring the cosmic one. Her caution warred with the urgency, but Voron's plan sparked something, human ingenuity perhaps bleeding through the data. All right. Guide me on the splice. Kale, seal what you can of the breach manually. We fail here, and their gentle end becomes ours. As Kale grunted and moved to the airlock, toolkit in hand, Voron pulled up a secondary console, his fingers flying to blend their xenobiology with the ancient code. The habitat groaned under another gust, lights flickering, but in that moment the three of them formed a fragile triad, cautious decoder, impatient guardian, bold fixer, pushing against the void humanity had left behind. The core hummed approval or warning, it was hard to tell. But they pressed on, the first threads of adaptation weaving through the dark. The dim glow of the auxiliary lights cast long shadows across the engineering bay, where sparks still danced from the ruptured conduit like dying fireflies. Elena gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles white against the scarred metal, as the ship's alarms wailed a monotonous dirge. Marcus wiped sweat from his brow with the back of his hand, his usual smirk replaced by a grim line. That patch held for what, 5 minutes? We're bleeding atmosphere faster than a punctured lung. He jabbed at the holographic display where red warnings pulsed like open wounds, hull integrity at 23%, oxygen reserves dipping into the critical zone. Lila hovered nearby, her fingers flying over a secondary panel, rerouting power from non-essentials. The air recyclers hummed erratically, pulling in the metallic tang of scorched wiring. She glanced up, eyes sharp behind her smudged visor. We can't keep diverting like this. The core's destabilizing. If we lose containment. Her voice trailed off, but the implication hung heavy. The gentle pulse of the fusion heart that had carried them this far would erupt, turning their farewell into a supernova's roar. Elena straightened, forcing calm into her posture even as her heart hammered. The plan had been simple: seal the breach, stabilize the drive, and slip through the nebula's veil before the alien fleet closed in. But the nebula's exotic particles had corroded the seals faster than anticipated, turning their clever adaptation into a fatal gamble. Options, she said, voice steady, cutting through the din. Marcus, can we jury-rig the auxiliary thrusters to vent the contaminated sections? He snorted, but there was no humor in it, just the raw edge of desperation. Crouching beside a tangle of exposed cables, he yanked a diagnostic tool from his belt and probed the mess. Wires hissed in protest, but a faint green flicker rewarded his effort. Maybe. It'll cost us maneuverability though. We'll be sitting ducks if those scouts vector in. The ship shuddered again, a deep groan echoing through the decks as another stress fracture spiderwebbed across the bulkhead. Outside, through the narrow viewport, the nebula swirled in ethereal blues and violets, beautiful and indifferent, hiding the approaching signatures on their scopes. Lila shook her head, calculations scrolling across her screen. It's not just the hull. The particles are interfering with the comms array. We can't signal the colony ship ahead, our message of hope, the data on the safe passage, it's all garbled now. She paused, her cautious nature warring with the fire in her eyes. This wasn't just survival, it was the legacy they carried, humanity's gentle hand extended across the void, sharing the maps to new worlds even as their own light faded. The cost pressed in. If they failed, the fleet would claim not just their vessel but the fragile trust built with the distant outposts. Elena nodded, mind racing through the fragments of their training, the late-night sims where grit had turned impossible odds. Then we adapt again. Marcus, seal what you can and prep the vents. Lila, isolate the core, buy us time. She turned toward the access hatch leading to the bridge, boots clanging on the grated floor. The air grew thinner, each breath a reminder of the stakes. As she sealed the door behind her, a spark leaped from the console, illuminating her determined face for an instant. The farewell they planned was meant to be a whisper of goodwill, a bridge to tomorrow. But the nebulous fury demanded more, a catastrophe forged in silence, where human ingenuity would either bridge the gap or burn it all away. Captain Elara Voss gripped the console, her knuckles whitening against the dim glow of the auxiliary lights. The Odysseus bridge felt smaller now, the air thick with the hum of failing recyclers and the faint metallic tang of scorched circuits. Outside the viewport, the nebula swirled in lazy eddies of purple and gold, indifferent to the drama unfolding within. Her team, Dr. Kai Ren, the cautious engineer with his perpetual squint, and Lieutenant Mira Sol, the witty sharpshooter whose jokes had kept them sane through the black, huddled around the holographic display. They were down to 3, after the core breach claimed the others in a flash of plasma fire 2 cycles ago. No time for grief, survival demanded focus. Recalibrating the warp coils, Kai muttered, his fingers dancing over the flickering panel. Sweat beaded on his forehead, catching the erratic light. The external challenge had hit them like a comet. A rogue singularity, a gravitational anomaly that twisted spacetime into knots, pulling their ship toward an event horizon they couldn't outrun. It wasn't some rival fleet or ancient curse, just physics, indifferent and absolute. But the stakes were personal. The Odyssey carried the last seed vault of Earth's biodiversity, humanity's gentle farewell encoded in frozen embryos and genetic archives. If they failed, it wasn't just the crew lost, it was the end of a species' legacy, catastrophic in its quiet finality. Mira leaned against the bulkhead, her rifle slung over her shoulder like an old friend. You know, if we punch through this mess, I owe you both a round of that synth whiskey we stashed in cryo. Assuming we don't get spaghettified first. Her voice carried that edge, light but laced with tension, a deliberate deflection. Elara shot her a glance, appreciating the grit. No lectures, no panic, just the rhythm of people who'd faced the void together. The first plan had backfired spectacularly. They'd tried slingshotting around the Singularity's accretion disk, using its own gravity as a boost. But the math lied, the tidal forces sheared off their secondary nacelle, and now the ship groaned under asymmetric thrust. Alarms blared softly in the background, a persistent whine that Elara tuned out like white noise. She traced the holographic trajectories, her mind racing through variables. Human ingenuity wasn't about miracles. It was about adaptation, stacking small wins against impossible odds. Adjust the ventral thrusters to compensate, Elara said, her tone steady, commanding without volume. Kai, route auxiliary power to the shields, keep us from folding like origami. He nodded, cautious as ever, double-checking inputs before hitting execute. The ship shuddered, a deep vibration rattling through the deck plates. Mira braced herself, eyes on the viewport where the Singularity loomed, a yawning maw ringed by fire. As the Odyssey veered, the nebula's gases lit up in response, painting the bridge in fleeting colors. Elara felt the pull in her gut, a reminder of the cost. The vault's integrity was holding at 87%, but another shear could crack it open, dooming the seeds to vacuum. No heroic speeches, just choices under fire. "We're not out yet," she said more to herself. "But we're not done." Kai's console beeped, a green flicker amid the reds. "Stabilizing. We might have a window." Mira grinned, sharp and fleeting. "Then let's make it count." The ship pressed forward, inching away from the abyss, but the anomaly pulsed, hungry as if sensing their defiance. The tension coiled tighter, the air electric with unspoken resolve. They were humans after all, built for this dance with disaster. The dim hum of the auxiliary engines vibrated through the deck plating, a constant reminder that the Endeavour was no longer the sleek explorer it had been named for. Captain Elara Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair, her knuckles white against the worn leather. The bridge crew moved like shadows in the red emergency lighting, their faces etched with the exhaustion of weeks in hiding. Outside the viewport, the asteroid belt loomed, a jagged graveyard of rock that had become their reluctant sanctuary. "Status on the cloaking field?" Elara asked, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. She didn't turn to Lieutenant Rao, she could hear the rapid clicks of his console already. "Holding at 72%, Captain," Rao replied, his fingers dancing over the holographic display. "But the power draw is bleeding us dry. Another hour, and we'll light up like a supernova on their scopes." Elara nodded, her mind racing through the dwindling options. The Krell Armada had cornered them here, their massive dreadnoughts slicing through the belt like predators through mist. Humanity's farewell broadcast, that carefully crafted message of peace and withdrawal, had been a feint, a gentle lie to buy time for the real plan. But now, with the Endeavour damaged and the fleet scattered, the cost was becoming all too real. Crew members lost, colonies abandoned, and the weight of it all pressing down like the vacuum beyond the hull. Ensign Kira Trent burst onto the bridge, her flight suit smeared with hydraulic fluid. The young pilot's eyes burned with that unyielding human fire, the kind that had carried them through the first contact wars and the exodus from Sol. "Shuttle baisare prepit, Mum. But the Krell scouts are closing, 3 minutes out minimum." Elara met her gaze, seeing the flicker of doubt beneath the resolve. Kira had been the one to suggest the asteroid feint, her quick thinking turning a potential slaughter into this precarious standoff. "Good work. Get your wing prepped. We're not dying in a hole today." As Kira dashed off, Elara activated the comms array. "All hands, this is the captain. The Krell think we've run out of tricks. They're wrong. Initiate Phase 3, divert all non-essential power to the forward arrays. Rao, sync with the debris field generators." The lieutenant hesitated, just a fraction. "That'll overload the core shields. If they hit us, they won't." Elara's tone brooked no argument. She could feel the eyes of the crew on her, waiting for the crack in her armor. But there was none. Humans didn't break, they bent until the universe yielded. Alarms blared as the first Krell probe breached the outer rocks, its sensors sweeping like a hunter's gaze. Elara leaned forward, watching the tactical overlay bloom with threats. The plan was audacious, born of desperation and that peculiar human knack for turning scraps into salvation. They'd rigged the asteroid field with salvaged mining charges, laced with the last of their antimatter reserves, not to destroy the Armada but to create a false collapse. A gentle nudge, making it look like the Endeavour had been crushed in a natural slide, buying the scattered human remnants time to regroup at the rally point. But as the probe closed, a new ping lit the screen. Not Krell. Something else, a faint distress beacon, human signature, flickering from the heart of the belt. "Captain," Rao said, his voice tight. "It's the Pioneer. They're alive but trapped under a rockfall. If we trigger the charges..." The choice hung in the air, heavy as the stones outside. Elara's jaw clenched. The Pioneer carried half the evacuees from the outer colonies, families, scientists, the future they'd promised in that farewell message. Losing them would make the feint meaningless, the catastrophe complete. "Adjust the yield," she ordered. "Target sectors Alpha through Delta only. Kira, I need your fighters to draw that probe off, make it look like a desperate sortie." "Aye, Captain." Kira's voice crackled over the intercom, laced with grim determination. Elara watched as the fighters launched tiny sparks against the void. The probe veered, engaged, but not before its data burst reached the armada. Seconds later, the charges detonated in precise sequence. Rocks tumbled in a controlled cascade, swallowing the Endeavor's projected silhouette in a plume of dust and ice. The ship shuddered, cloaking field straining as debris pinged off the hull. On the tactical, the Pioneer's beacon stabilized, a rescue drone slipping out to meet it. But the victory tasted like ash. The Krell would regroup, hunt harder now, convinced humanity was fracturing. And in the quiet aftermath, Elara knew the gentle farewell had cost them more than ships. It had carved a scar across their souls, one that no clever adaptation could fully heal. As the Endeavor limped toward the extraction vector, Elara allowed herself a single weary breath. The stars ahead gleamed with promise and peril, but they pressed on. Because that's what humans did. The final probe hummed softly in the dim control room, its signal threading through the void like a whispered promise. Elara watched the screens, her fingers hovering over the console, the weight of 10 years' exile pressing on her shoulders. The alien fleet loomed in the feed, sleek, iridescent hulls blotting out stars, their weapons primed for the call they'd promised. But humanity's gift, that fragile arc of code and memory, was already burrowing into their networks. Jackson leaned against the bulkhead, his usual grin faded to a tight line. It's in. The virus is rewriting their fire controls as we speak. His voice cracked just a fraction, betraying the engineer who jury-rigged half the station from scrap. No bravado now, only the quiet resolve that had kept them alive through blackouts and betrayals. Mira, ever the cautious one, cross-checked the diagnostics. 80% integration. But if they trace it back... She trailed off, eyes flicking to the escape pod's blinking ready light. The plan had been simple at the start. Infiltrate, sabotage, slip away. Yet here they were, cornered in the galaxy's edge, the pod's fuel barely enough for one jump. Alarms blared suddenly, red lights pulsing like a heartbeat. The fleet's vanguard ships shuddered on screen, their formations fracturing as simulated malfunctions cascaded, shields flickering, engines stalling in a chain of elegant chaos. Elara's code, born from human grit and forgotten algorithms, turned their precision against them. One destroyer veered, plowing into its neighbor in a bloom of debris and silent fire. "They're blind," Jackson murmured, awe edging his words. "Our farewell, it's working." But the cost clawed at them. The station groaned under retaliatory scans, hull integrity dropping. Mira sealed the last bulkhead, her hands steady despite the tremor in her breath. "Pods prepped. We go now or not at all." Elara hesitated, glancing at the data stream, billions of human histories encoded, now flooding the aliens' archives, a gentle invasion of stories and songs that would outlast empires. It wasn't conquest, it was legacy, catastrophic in its subtlety, forcing the stars to remember what they'd tried to erase. "Launch," she said finally, strapping in as the pod decoupled with a metallic sigh. The station receded, a speck against the unraveling fleet, its reactors set to overload in a final, defiant flare. In the pod's confines, silence fell, broken only by the hum of hyperspace coils. Jackson reached across, clasping Myra's hand. She nodded, her caution yielding to trust. Elara stared into the streaking void, the weight lifting just enough to breathe. They'd bought time, not victory but survival's echo. Humanity's end wasn't a scream, but a seed planted deep in the enemy's core waiting to grow.